Yeah, so today I want to talk about bridging three worlds. The world of cultural heritage, the world of tourism, and the world of technology. We've been talking throughout the whole day about bridging technology and cultural heritage, but now let's add tourism into it. Before I start, I want to just say a few words how we got to this triple bridge. By the way, there's a triple bridge in Ljubljana, also part of UNESCO World Heritage from last year on. So yeah, we are a high-performance computing company who is 30 years old, which is quite old for an IT company. And of course, back then we didn't deal with cultural heritage, VR, 3D models, and tourism. We dealt with, well, I wasn't there, but they did, with very basic, from today's point of view, very basic technologies. But throughout the whole, throughout the 30 years, ARCTUR has always tried to bring innovation and always in search for the next steps, the next fields of exploration. And this is how we, a few years ago, decided to use the knowledge from what we call Industry 4.0 and bring that knowledge and expertise, technological expertise, into a new field, into tourism. This is how Tourism 4.0 has evolved. And of course, what is Tourism 4.0? It's a word that didn't exist before. We've coined it. But our idea is that within Tourism 4.0, we are trying to bring technology into tourism through different projects. So we are running both commercial and subsidized, so publicly funded R&D projects. Today I will be talking only about one set of projects. And what is Tourism 4.0? So the idea, when you're thinking how tourism should be and what challenges we want to address, we've come up with the proposal that to address the challenges of how to manage tourist flows, how to create customized tourist experience, and how to assess the impact and manage the impact of tourism in local communities. To answer to these challenges, we always have to keep in mind that there's a local community who should be in the center of this development. So when we are developing tourism, it's not that we are developing something with tourists in mind, of course also with tourists in mind, but especially the local communities. And I think this is a novel approach, that developing tourism is not so much about tourists, it's understanding how much of tourism the local community can survive and handle. And when in tourism, we are always having this, we're having very diverse group of providers who themselves, many of them have no technological background, no technological experience, hotels, different vendors and so on. But they are all, in a way, using technology. They're using advanced technology because they're using the platforms. They're using the big platforms, and of course, these platforms are using this technology. So they're using big data, artificial intelligence, and so on, also deep learning and so on. And our idea of Tourism 4.0 is that we should give the tourist destinations and tourist providers control over the technology that they're using. So this is why we've developed a few streams of our development where with the tools with which we try to help tourist destinations, especially tourist destinations, to assess the impact of tourism in the local environment, to manage tourist flows, to how to interchange data on tourists and so on. And in this story, I'm not gonna present these tools in this story. Quite soon the topic of heritage, cultural heritage, arose. Why? Because we've realized that if we want to develop tourism in a sustainable way, we need to deal with managing of tourist flows. And we need to manage tourist flows in a way that, of course, we avoid overcrowding, over-tourism. Thusly, we need to develop new locations, new points of interest. And isn't cultural heritage one of the best sources for such a development? I mean, cultural heritage is evenly dispersed, quite evenly dispersed. It's not concentrated only in certain areas. Now I'm talking about, let's say, the example of Slovenia or Europe in general. It's part of the local DNA. I mean, if you developed something in accordance with cultural heritage, it's most probably gonna be synced with the DNA of the local communities, of the local cultures. And isn't this a type of tourism that we all want? So today I want to talk about a set of projects that we've been developing for the past 2 years that have been called Digital Innovation of Cultural Heritage projects. And as I said, there are a set of projects that have started in 2019 and that have most of them ended last year and some of them this year. And the idea of these projects started by looking at this map. So this is the map of registered immovable cultural heritage of Slovenia, and you see it is quite evenly distributed. The white areas are actually the areas where humans haven't lived in Slovenia, or that just they haven't had permanent settlements. And each of these points presents an opportunity in tourism for a story to be told, for a new narrative to be developed. Of course, many of these points will never become a big tourist attraction. This is also not our intention. But there are good stories that are not artificially imagined or fantasizing stories. They're, as I said, synced with our DNA, with our local culture. And cultural heritage and digital technologies can be of help here of how to present these elements of immovable cultural heritage. Let's say that all these points here, most of these points here, could be small monuments, could be castles, could be protected buildings. So of very different degrees of protection and also size, physical size. So digital technologies can be of help. Of course, we all know that digitizing cultural heritage is good for documentation, is good for research, but from the point of view of developing tourism, it's also good for attracting new audiences. This is what we've been talking this morning. If you change the medium, you also attract new audiences, even though the content stays relatively the same. Digital technologies enable interactivity, and this is something that especially newer generations want. But also, such projects can be of help in managing tourist flows. If we understand where the tourists are, how they are interacting with the tourist offer, we can know and we can predict how they are moving around the country, around the destinations, and we can, by giving them incentives, we can change these tourist flows. And of course, by bridging tourism, technology, and cultural heritage, we can offer new opportunities for creative and cultural industries. And this is something that is also important from the development point of view. So bringing new professions, new profiles into these stories. So as I said, this set of projects that were called Digital Innovation of Cultural Heritage projects have started in 2019 when the Ministry of Economic Development and Technology has published a public call, to which Slovenian tourist destinations could apply. So Slovenian tourist destinations are So they're publicly owned, mostly publicly owned organizations. They're not profit organizations. And in Slovenia, we have 35 of them. So these are, Slovenia is a small country, and you can imagine that having 35 of such organizations means that you have 35 of small organizations. So these are organizations ranging from 3 employees to 15 or 20 maybe in the largest cities. So what the ministry proposed is that each of the destinations 3D digitizes at least 3 monuments of immovable cultural heritage. So you get 35 multiplied 3, you get more than 100 3D models of Slovenian cultural heritage. And that they use one of these 3D models in developing a tourist experience. And what is this tourist experience? So it could be basically anything ranging from mobile apps to virtual reality. It could be online, it could be offline. Some of them have developed physical experiences, so they have built rooms and so on. Some of them developed something totally online where you access the content through your phones. And they had 1.5 years approximately to develop these projects. So we as ARCTUR have worked with a few of them, of course, after public procurement procedures, and I'm gonna show a few of these to you. But first, again, the idea was to start like this. First, so you get a 3D model of a certain area, then you maybe develop some digital content based on it. Let's say you developed an attempt of 3D reconstruction. So this is the same. So this is one of the castles in the west of Slovenia. Then what the destination could do is it could develop a mobile app to present this digital content that has been developed. So to, in a way, showcase the content through a medium of a mobile app, or it could develop a virtual reality experience. So these are just a few of the parts of a virtual reality, one of the virtual reality experiences that we've been working on. But of course, the end goal was not a virtual reality experience. It was to create a tourist product. And the virtual reality experience is not necessarily a tourist product. So here, they had even a higher goal. So it was to develop a Slovenia unique experience. This is something that in Slovenia, it's a special type of tourist experience that are promoted more than other tourist experiences, and that they should be local, authentic, boutique, green, and so on, and so on. So quite a big challenge, right, for teams of 3 with no experience in cultural heritage, with no experience in technology, but of course knowing of tourism. So we've started this with trainings. These are one of the trainings that we've as ARCTUR run. We had these interdisciplinary workshops, trainings, where we didn't go the way I was showing you so far. So we didn't start with 3D models. We didn't then continue with apps and so on. We started with very simple question: who is your audience? And then what message do you want to convey to this audience? So we didn't want to talk about which building will we 3D digitize, or is it going to be laser scanning or photogrammetry? We didn't want to talk with them, is AR better or VR better? No, what matters is who are you talking to and what message do you want to tell them? And this was hard, actually, because everyone wants to just skip these steps and just say, okay, it's going to be a 3D model of that and that. And then the mayor wants this building to have a 3D model, and another mayor wants a different building, and so on. But we, in a way, pushed them to really think about the content, and only then decide, based on these two answers to these two questions, then decide what medium will they use. Because technology is a medium, so are you using AR or VR? It's not a thing of preference. It depends on what kind of content and what kind of message you want to convey to which publics. VR is very good when you want to visualize something that is maybe not accessible, or you don't want that people go there. To give you an example, one of the destinations in the south of Slovenia, what they wanted to present is a forest that hasn't been touched by humans yet. And of course they decided for virtual reality. Why? Because you put on virtual glasses away from the forest. You put on virtual reality glasses, you virtually move to this forest, and then there, using these virtual reality glasses, you can see how the water flows through the trees, how different microorganisms affect the whole environment in this forest. So virtual reality is, for example, good when we want to show places that don't exist or where we don't want people to go. On the other hand, augmented reality, where we want people to understand that, where we want them to compare what used to be and what is there now, and so on, and so on, and so on. So the answer of the medium of the technology is can only be answered after we know whom are we doing, for whom we are doing this, and what message do we want to tell. So we've developed a toolkit for them. We've discussed what a 3D model is, because this is was a challenge. Is a point cloud good enough, or do we want a solid 3D model? How accurate should it be? Do we need it for a 3D model to be accurate to, I don't know, 5 millimeters? Or does it matter for tourists? And of course, we decided that accuracy matters. Maybe not to tourists, but it matters for the documentation, which is also one of the side results of this project. Through these workshops, which started at the beginning with a lot of skepticism, somehow we've developed an understanding, or at least having a rough picture of what we should develop. And of course, here we need to stress that it's not about technology again, and it's not just about storytelling. It's also about sustainability and about expertise, cultural heritage expertise. So having all these things in mind is hard. And of course, not all projects were perfect. Not all projects satisfied all of these criteria. But of course, they were a learning process for many of these institutions. So then next step after public procurement, after, of course, approving the projects, after approving the ideas, was the digital capture, of course. Many of you know, so either photogrammetry, laser scanning. And what is here important is that all of the 3D models that have been created throughout this process have, of course, are owned by the local authorities, by the local tourist destination organizations, but they are all also part of the documentation of the Ministry of Culture. And this is how, in a way, structurally and systematically we avoided the the danger that they get lost, so that they, you know, how they are put on a disk, put in a drawer, somewhere in an office, tourist office of someone who doesn't even have the software to open these files, and then they're replaced by another person, and a lot of work gets lost. So the whole time there was this idea that they're not just developing individual processes and individual projects, but that the results and the intermediate results are also gathered and collected. Yeah, so for example, you know, most of the cases we as ARCTUR, we use photogrammetry and then combine it with laser scanning. So for us, photogrammetry is the primarily option of capturing immovable cultural heritage. And I don't know if this makes sense to explain, but how the photogrammetry works. But basically the idea is that the more input data that you have, the better the output can be. So the more photos you take, and of course the more in a more structured and systemic way that you take them, and of course the more precise you are, the better the results. Here we had a benchmark of the error, that the error in accuracy should be less than 18 millimeters. So let's say the difference between the building, the size of a building in the real world compared to the one in the virtual reality world is less than 18 millimeters, which of course for a hut like that is not much, but of course for a monastery like that is very little. So the accuracy is very high. And then, as I said, many of the destinations and for many of these buildings, we've decided together with the local administrations to create the attempts of 3D reconstructions, because this is a good storytelling tool. Again, it's a tool that should be supplemented with other content as well. So showing such attempts of 3D reconstructions is nice, but we always have to point that they are attempts. They are not actual depictions of how it used to be in the 17th century in this case. So as I said, they spark imagination and they can open up discussions, but we need someone to be part of this discussion and guide the discussion in a more contextualized way. And what followed was the creating these new media, virtual reality experiences, AR apps, holograms, different interactive screens, object recognition tables, apps, and so on. In some cases, they decided for small things. In some cases, they redesigned the whole rooms and so on. And I'll later show some of the cases. And then further build on these digital tools, digital media, and add physical experiences, add gastronomy, add biking tours, add different guided tours and so on. So not that the digital experience is not the sole experience, it's part of a bigger picture where other elements that cannot be communicated through digital means are explained. And now I want to show you a video of a set of these projects just to give you an impression of what has been developed. So this was like a compilation of very different projects combined together. And now I want to just talk about a few of them, about a few of very different ones, just to maybe explain a little bit more about what challenges we had in different of these cases. So maybe the first one would be one dealing with Velika Planina. So Velika Planina is a mountain pasture area in the central Slovenia. So it's above 1,000 meters above sea level. It's basically characterized with these small shepherd's huts, lots of greenery, lots of cows, and of course lots of tourists walking around. So how do we digitally present the cultural heritage of this Velika Planina without in a way spoiling it? This was one of the challenges. Like, do we go there and put screens, LCD screens there? Do we want people to walk around with their phones and so on? And we decided not to do this. And we decided to create digital content that is not presented at Velika Planina, and it is presented down in the valley. This is also how we enabled people that have certain accessibility challenges and cannot access Velika Planina to see the content. And what we've developed was this big interactive screen. I don't know, maybe you've seen it in the video. So it's 83-inch screen, touch screen that presents through images, texts, and partially 3D, basically presents the cultural heritage of Velika Planina to the tourists. So this is placed now in a tourist information point, and it's actually very useful for tourists coming and before they decide to go to Velika Planina to have understanding where are they going and why this is so important and why this is an important part of Slovenian cultural heritage. It's also, as I said, it's important for people with different different impairments to experience Velika Planina. What we did is we have a virtual reality fly over Velika Planina where they can basically experience this the feeling of being among the cows and these mountain huts. And it's also proved to be very effective because these area being so high, it's actually not accessible for mostly, let's say, half of the year because there's fog. The cable car doesn't run due to it, and so on. So actually, it's good entry point for many of the tourists. The second of the projects that maybe I want to talk about is the project of castles of Bosawi. So Bosawi is a region in southeast of Slovenia. It's along the Sava River, so this is the same river that then goes through Zagreb and Belgrade. In Belgrade, it joins with Danube. And this region is characterized with castles. Castles from different time periods. Not all of them have been active in parallel. So the whole region wants to, in a way, present themselves through the castles. But they're dispersed. Some of them are in very inaccessible areas. And it's hard to attract people to go there. So we were thinking, how do we present these castles to the widest audience possible? And we decided to go there where the most of the tourists are. And this, in that region, is a thermal spa. So it's a thermal spa with, kids running around the pools, I don't know how to say, the slides and so on. So something very different from cultural heritage institution. But it's actually where a lot of people are throughout the whole days, throughout the summer. It's thousands of people there, and we built a room in that spa. So we took one of the old abandoned rooms, we painted it black, we put this medieval music in the background, but the medieval music played with electric guitar and so on, so interpreted in a way. And we put in the room holograms, virtual reality glasses, LCD screens. And the idea was, and now basically it's full with kids, mostly. It's like throughout the whole summer season, it's full with kids that come there, that in a way, experience the castles. Actually, for the first time, they hear about these castles. Otherwise, they would never know of Castle Svibno, which is, even to me, it was unknown. And actually, it seems that it works. So when you have, let's say, a family who is in the spa, in this thermal resort for 1 week, they get bored. They get bored there, of course. I mean, it's the same thing all over again, and they're looking for what to do. And of course, if the kid is obsessed with these castles, looking them on virtual reality glasses, it's much easier to convince the children to go to these castles. And this is why we've developed a web app, so an application that works on your phone in your browser, where they, especially the kids, they need to discover the hidden treasures of these castles. So of course, for every castle that you go there and then you search for these 3 hidden clues, you get a small gift. I mean, it could be a juice in a bar or so on, so like really small gifts. And everyone that do all 7 of them then compete in a much bigger for a much bigger prize. So yeah, these were the castles of Bosawi. Another project that we did was at the coast. Izola is the name of the town, and Izola, as the name says, used to be an island. So basically before the 18th century, it was an island. And we wanted to tell the story of this island throughout the 8,000 years. And it's hard to do it. I mean, it's very hard to tell a story ranging from pre-Roman area to throughout the whole changes, the Venice, Austro-Hungary, then comes the Napoleon, then again Austrians, then it's the Italians, then it's the kingdoms of Yugoslavia, the kingdom of the socialist Yugoslavia, and so on. So we presented it using a 3D printed model of the town. So we've printed the today's Izola, and this is set in an existing small museum, let's say. And then we we project this story, so ranging for in 9 minutes, we present 8,000 years, just like the story being projected from top down, with all these different changes happening. And of course, here the main challenges were how to decide what to include and what to not. How do we show some of the things? I mean, we are using this bird's eye perspective, but how do you show the small changes in the town, like the people's experiences? And this is why we couldn't just stay with the realism. We needed actually to add. We created music that is designed specially for this occasion, these different symbols and so on. And we see that it works, but especially it works if there's a human next to it, if there's a someone who helps interpreting this story, because we don't know what the background knowledge the tourists have. So if they're educated, it's easy for them to understand it. Of course, they know the difference between different areas in Austro-Hungarian Empire or before Habsburg Empire. But for kids, of course, it's much harder. That's why they need a human who tries to, in a way, explain different parts in simpler words to them. Another project that we did was in the central Slovenia, in an area that has been characterized with coal mining. So actually there, the coal mining started in the late 19th century. And due to coal mining, of course, the surface started to, I don't know how to say, go down. And that's why artificial lakes emerged. Basically, water filled these holes and different lakes emerged. And we wanted to tell this story of these lakes to the wider audience. So they already have a tourist mine. And in the tourist mine, you know, they explain everything about mining, why coal is important, about the technical tools used in the mine and so on. But nobody actually explains why there's a lake on top of a mine and how did that lake happen to be there. And of course, what was there before the lake? Nobody tells that, and this is the story that we wanted to tell. So you come into the mine and we present you this story using partially 3D animation and old images. We present the story of the villages that were there before the lakes appeared. And we present the stories of these people who lived there and had to move. And this is, so these lakes, in a way, in 100-year time, from no lakes, we have the largest lake in Slovenia now. And these stories are not the funniest stories. I mean, they're not really happy stories. There are stories of people that had to flee their homes. They have to find new housing, many of them working in the mine. So they had to, in a way, move away so that they could still continue to have a job. So there you hear this story, and then you go, of course, up to the surface. You enjoy the nice landscape of the lake, and then we take people on the boat, and somewhere on the middle of the lake, the guy driving the boat gives them virtual reality glasses, and there they can now go virtually. They can go underneath the water, and basically it starts with floating next to the graves, and they see a village that is not there, of course. It was demolished before the lakes were formed, but we've reconstructed this village, talking with older inhabitants that still remember how it was, taking old pictures, taking old maps. Actually, because it's a mining area, everything was very well documented. So we've reconstructed one of these villages, and to me it matters the most when I hear that someone who lived in that village says, "Okay, yeah, it's how I remember it." So I think this is like in you know, it's it means that also it means a lot for them because they can tell their story again, and that it's not forgotten that basically they had to move. By the way, now that lake is actually full of tourists. It's super popular area, and you forget that there's a coal mine next to it, which hopefully will close soon. Last project that I want to show you is a project happening in Ljubljana. So, as I said earlier, Ljubljana got UNESCO's World Heritage sites, and it's Plečnik's monuments that became UNESCO World Heritage. Plečnik, Jože Plečnik, was an architect who basically transformed the whole Ljubljana. His style, some would say, so he worked in the first part of the 20th century, first half of the 20th century, partially also later after the Second World War. And so this is the time of, in that area we had secession, right? That's the name, yeah. But he didn't do it that way. His style is very much reminding of the Greek and like this Greek temples and so on. If you see pillars in Ljubljana, it's probably his works. But he transformed the whole Ljubljana, not just the city center. And the challenge was, how do we present parts of his culture, his works, our cultural heritage, to these people, and because it's in some cases it's hard for tourists to travel to this area. Also, he constructed and he planned for the cemetery, and we don't want tourists to go to the cemetery and take pictures around the cemetery and so on. Or he designed the church, which is outside of Ljubljana, and it's basically just inaccessible by public transportation. So we've developed virtual reality experience and augmented reality experience that is now part of a wider guided tour throughout Ljubljana, where you walk in the city center, see what has been constructed by him, and then you actually, using the virtual reality, you can see the parts that are outside of the city center, but you can also see the parts that haven't been implemented. So he created many plans that were never put to practice because basically he just had too many ideas that had no clients, or he couldn't convince someone to finance it. So this is what we developed. Yeah, okay, enough with the case studies. Of course, there are different of these projects that we did across Slovenia, that also other did across Slovenia. And we just felt that it would be very, very sad that they're lost in different and just accessible in these local areas. So together with the ministry, we've decided to create a website where basically all these 3D models, all the 360 degrees images, all the attempts of reconstructions are gathered together, and one can actually explore them and explore Slovenian cultural heritage through a bit of a different lens. And what we are also using here is a 3D viewer that was actually developed together with Europeana in the project that we've been running until today. Today is the last day of the project. This 3D viewer is a viewer that enables fast loading of 3D models because they're quite big and it was very hard to showcase them. So it enables fast loading through what we call progressive loading, meaning that the image that you see at the beginning is only a part of the whole model. So it doesn't load the whole model. Only once you zoom in and move around, it starts loading different parts of the image itself. And this is how we enable that a model of 2 giga is loaded in a few seconds. And this is through this tool, also all of these models, so more than 100 of these models are then directly aggregated to Europeana. So you can actually see these 3D models now in Europeana as well. So yeah, many of the, as I said, and especially this morning, I was thinking, okay, did we do actually everything about sustainability that was said there? Actually, no. I mean, in many of the cases, we tried. In many of the cases, we succeeded, but not all of them. And I see this as a process. I mean, something where actually a lot of people who had no experience have been working, have been learning. Tourism workers who previously had a lot of skepticism towards cultural heritage, saying, well, cultural heritage, that's not for us. I mean, this is museums deal with that. We do different things. Now they got it. I mean, they got it that it's the same thing. They're all, in a way, interpreting what is here and what was here. So for this this whole initiative, the ministry, one of these projects got an award. So the one in Maribor, but also the ministry got second place. And I think hopefully the ministry will continue with these initiatives, even in a way pushing towards developments where it's not just about the numbers, but it's all about the content, about the message about Slovenia that we want to give to the outside world. And for us at ARCTUR, this is a start of, in a way, a center, a competence center where we want to build on these skills that we've developed, that we've gained. And of course, you're all more than welcome to share with us your thoughts and your views or your proposals. With that, I would want to conclude. And if someone has any questions, I would be happy to answer them.
Thank you, Mateusz, for sharing these wonderful pictures of your beautiful country and the innovative ways that you use to make them accessible. I've learned a lot, and maybe you've just made me decide for my next holiday destination.
Hopefully.
But my colleagues Leonie and Srishti will take your questions. Leonie will take them from online, so people online can also ask the questions in the chat. And people in the room here can raise their hands if you have a question, and then Srishti will come to you. Douglas.
Thank you, Mateusz. That was fascinating, really inspirational. Thank you. And I also want to revisit Slovenia. One thing that I was thinking about all the way through is every time I look at YouTube, I see usually a couple who are often American and quite attractive in the Greek islands, you know, basically going around with a drone and doing kind of crowdsourced, user-generated tourism. You know, they're almost like acting as tourist influencers for different destinations. And I'm guessing that a lot of people also look at YouTube, of course, TripAdvisor, Airbnb, Google itself, many other platforms, to think about where to go, what other people think about these different destinations. So how do you approach connecting all the amazing content that you've been creating with where many people are looking to make informed decisions about tourism?
Reminds me of one of these workshops that we had. We've been talking that tourist destination organizations, they're not about providing information anymore to tourists. You know, this is how it used to be. They stand or sit there and they waited until tourists come and ask some questions, and they gave maps out to them. Tourist destinations now should be about content management, about content creation and management. And it's hard for many of them because, of course, it's not just the content that they create. As you said, it's the content that is created and they have no influence on. And what we, in a way, wanted them to start thinking also about this content and how to reuse it again and again in different contents, and this way create this narrative and the stories that they want to share. And of course, hopefully, as I said, they should try to manage these different views, different comments, as you said, on that are happening on YouTube, Facebook, and so on and so on.
There's a question from an online attendee as well. This is from Pelle Philipson from the Arbeidsrecht Museum. It's a question he posted after the first video, so it might be relevant. The graphics in the 3D animations are somewhat familiar. Have you used a graphics engine from a well-known game studio?
The first video was about the castle. Yeah. There we used. Can I say the name of the company out loud? Yeah. It was done in Unity. So not in the other.
Yeah.
Please go ahead.
Okay. Well, thank you. I think it was very impressive what you shown here. What I really was also interested in is you work together with Europeana to build this and to also integrate it in the offering of Europeana. So this is already a case where tourism and cultural heritage interlink. A little bit on Douglas' question also, sort of the wider picture. There's also, and I'm always involved with data spaces, so I'm really interested to see how that works. There is also a tourism data space. So I was just wondering how you from your point of view, link information that you're sharing with Europeana also with other tourism initiatives that includes hotels and other sort of more commercial tourism. So what's your view on the link between the data spaces of cultural heritage and tourism?
Yeah, there's a lot of connections, sure. And this is, luckily, we are involved in both of these projects, data space for cultural heritage and data space for tourism. And this is where we want to link them. But it's true, like in the case of cultural heritage, when we say data, we mostly mean images, 3D models, and so on. In tourism, when they hear the word data, they think of data about visitors, or the numbers, so more like statistical data. And this was one of the ideas where we, as I said sometime in the presentation, having the knowledge of how the people and how many of them used this data, this content, let's say digital content, physically, let's say in Velika Planina on this mountain hut, we can understand how they behaved, and this is the using of digital content and data space for culture, heritage is also statistics for the tourism sector. And I don't have the answers to all the aspects, but I hopefully in these two projects we can develop on that and find new connections.
Okay. Maybe another online question? Okay, then here. Sorry.
Hey, Matej. I congratulate us both and some other colleagues here on the last day of Weave. Your work has been amazing. I mean, for anybody who hasn't been in Slovenia, I count myself among them. I wish you would invite us tomorrow. I would jump on a plane and go straight there. What I wanted to ask about is the notion of a tourism 4.0. Does it imply going beyond the concept of a 3.0 culture that is participatory, where ideas and applications start from a community, whatever community that might be? Is it aiming at going beyond? In other words, you talked a lot about benefiting local communities with the applications and the solutions that you devise. Could you imagine going a step further than that and having communities come to you with crazy ideas and trying to work from that point of departure? And going back to Douglas's remark, could you imagine that it's not the local communities inspiring you, but actually the tourists themselves? Maybe they have some gaps that they define in their user experiences or their visitor experiences. Is this something that you see as an integral part of where this tourism 4.0 is going?
I think that, we can make a somehow distinction between local communities and tourists, but isn't it harder and harder to define who is a tourist? I mean, are digital nomads tourists or not? Are students that study abroad tourists or not? Is it me going to a neighboring town a tourist? And I think we should break this barrier between them, and then it's not just who influences who. We are all. It's the world is of all of us. It's not just of the local inhabitants there. But we have to keep in mind that this is why we always stressed by local community. It's not just local people. It's like the life of that place, the life of the place defining people that live there. And to answer to your question, we want people, and I mean local communities or someone else, to use this content that has been created here. For us, of course, as a company, it's hard because we don't own the data. We cannot just openly share it. But we are always saying to the local tourist destinations, don't hide the 3D models. Don't in a way, when a group of students come to you or a group of local enthusiasts come to you and want to do something, share it with them. And they might create some, as you said, crazy idea that maybe at the beginning it won't look nice, but then, of course, through time, it might develop into something that influences and consequently develops the tourism. Yeah. And the plane for Slovenia, for Venice, leaves tonight at 9 or 10 o'clock. I have 4 seats in my car that go from Venice to Ljubljana, so if anyone wants to join.
Okay. Let's arrange those seats later. Thank you very much, Mateusz. This was a great presentation, and we'll be in touch, I'm sure. Thank you very much.